Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. This is an exciting episode today. This is coming to you on International Women's Day 2023, and I thought, why not? Let's do an episode kind of related to that. I mean, it's an episode we're going to do anyway, but I think this is a really great one to kind of have as a kind of keynote, if you want to call it that, to kind of coincide with International Women's Day. So I hope you are well. If you are a new listener to the podcast, welcome. And if you have been here since the start, then fantastic. I very much appreciate you. Today's episode is about the one thing that you can do to improve your leadership as an entrepreneur. I purposely don't kind of say female founder or female entrepreneur because I know that's kind of a bit of a difficult one, and we hear that a lot on this kind of day. But yes, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a woman, I think this is going to be very useful for you, and is something that we all can work on, no matter how advanced you are in business and how kind of forward thinking you are. I think this is something that everyone struggles with from time to time. So, drum roll, please. That thing that we are talking about is being more direct as a woman in business, being, presenting ideas, communicating more effectively via just saying what you want to say and being really clear and direct. And this is something that sounds so simple, but I work with people on at all levels, whether they're starting their business or whether they, I had a session with someone who is at a massive, huge, one of the biggest businesses in the world, arguably, and, is managing a team, and it was really difficult. And it's like a multi-million pound, hundreds of million pound project. And, they're also struggling with this. And I think it's very normal too. And is the one thing that, as we get better and more advanced as entrepreneurs, this is the thing that still comes around in leadership conversations. It's always something that's at top of mind. So being direct, today we're going to talk about that. What does it mean? We're going to talk about how to be more direct. We're going to talk about, how can you do it in the best possible way? I've got a lot to cover, so let's go, and I'll try and make it as quick as possible. So why do we need to be more direct? This is something I wanted to touch on because I think people just, not everyone's self-aware, or a lot of us are self-aware in areas and they're not in others. So the main kind of thing I want to talk to you about is, first of all, think about where are you not as direct as you could be? Where do you purposely know what you could say that would be direct, but then reword it in a different way to kind of, make things easier for someone or help them to hear it better? What does that mean for you? And then I want you to think about, how can you be more direct, or where do you feel like you're not being direct enough? But in terms of answering the question around why do we need to be more direct, here's my thoughts. It matters a hell of a lot how direct you are in terms of what an outcome you're going to get from a conversation. So the whole point of having this conversation today is because as women and as entrepreneurs in general, we have to master the art of communication, and that will forever be a task for us all, right? Communication changes, best practice changes. We are all on a journey to improve that. One of the ways that you can do this is about being direct, and is about being really kind of clear in your communication style. Now, when you are more direct, it often means that your business is a lot more efficient. And I have seen this very much firsthand from doing a meta-analysis, unofficially, informally, of there's a real correlation between people who are direct and their operations being efficient, their whole efficiency of their business, the amount of how lean their business is. Everything just runs a lot better. So if you can get really direct with communicating, things will become more efficient. I also really believe in working on this idea of being more direct from an inclusivity perspective. So it is much easier for everyone to understand you if you are direct versus just talking loads and loads of words and not really being very conclusive and not really helping anyone understand what you're trying to say. So trying to develop your ability to be really direct helps people who maybe struggle processing or maybe struggle with taking in lots of information at once. Particularly people who are neurodivergent can find people who aren't direct very difficult to kind of interact with, because they can feel like, I don't understand what you're telling me. And if you manage a team, this is really important for you to think about of, right, yes, actually being direct is really beneficial for other people around me because people know what I'm asking for. The other reason I'm really huge on this is because when you are more direct, you are a better salesperson, and you are in the business of business. And that means you are a salesperson. And whether you like that or not, that is the case. And it will be for the lifetime of your business. I argue that every single person on this planet is a salesperson because you are selling people every single day on various things, whether that's in your job, in your life, with your children. You are a salesperson. You are also a negotiator. Negotiation is not bad. Negotiation is really important. It is an incredible skill set to have as a human being. And part of that comes down to you being extremely direct and understanding what it is you're trying to communicate. So be really clear. Think about, I am going to improve in terms of really working on being more direct because I will become a better salesperson. I will be better at selling. Next thing. The other thing that is really key is that people who are direct come across as being confident. They come across as knowing what they're talking about. And this is really important because often when we'll come to me and say, I don't feel confident, or I'm not a confident person. And there's a whole different conversation to be had around confidence. However, a lot of confidence comes from action and actually doing something. It's not necessarily a feeling of like, of just being like, oh, I don't feel it. It's like you can become confident. And one of the easiest ways to do that is being direct. Because if you come into it and you're like, right, this is what I'm doing, it comes across very kind of calm. Is something we're going to talk about in a minute as well. But calmness is really linked to confidence and really understanding who you are and what you're saying. Now, what normally happens when we talk about being direct in business is there's kind of an anxiety sometimes that comes from this because you might have had a corporate career, maybe you're in a corporate career right now where that hasn't really gone well for you and you felt like you were kind of shunned and maybe it just wasn't beneficial for you to be direct. Or some people feel really kind of scared towards it. They're like, I don't know how to be more direct, or directness kind of makes me feel uneasy and makes me feel like potentially there's something wrong. So let's just talk about something called the likability penalty, which is something that is very true. It's been proven. It is not my made up thing. It is it's very much alive and kicking, sadly. And this is where women are deemed to be less likable for doing the same thing as a man in the workplace and in business. And so women want to be likable because there is an element of you do get far in business if you're likable. If people like you, then, there's an argument of, oh, this is going to go really well and people want to help you. Now, that's a whole different conversation to unpack. But what I think is really important to talk about with this is I have found a real solution to this, and I have found a real kind of band-aid to this, which is using feminine and masculine energy to balance this out. Because likability penalty really is, comes down to this idea of, stereotypes and masculine behavior. And so what I've found is, you can pair feminine energy with quite a masculine approach to business, and it becomes so much easier and it flows much better and it becomes really enjoyable. And that is really key when we have these conversations, because it's about remembering that this is not a case of us turning into these, really high-powered women. Like, that's great, and I love that. But I know some of you listening to this, that doesn't appeal to you. That's not what you want, and that is totally cool. And what you can bring in instead is this idea of using feminine and masculine energy to really guide you forward as you grow in your leadership. Now, next up, you might also... So I got something on my lip. Oh, if you're watching this on video, I'm sorry. If you're listening, you're like, what is she doing? Oh, it's got like something on my lip. That's really annoying. So what also can happen is you might face a microaggression in the workplace, in business, that then causes you to kind of retreat inwards. And you're like, oh, well, I don't want to do this again because, I've done it once and I got this really unpleasant response from whether that's a male or whether that's even another woman. It's really... To some degree, it doesn't matter in the sense of the feeling and the output is the same thing. It's difficult. Also, can I just say, I appreciate that we're talking a lot about feminine and masculine energy here, which obviously is not exclusive to a gender, but I am also aware that we are talking about gender, and I am very much talking about male and female and not acknowledging the fact that some people, are non-binary and maybe feel like this is it's not very inclusive. And I really appreciate that. As someone who isn't non-binary, I don't want to comment and kind of create a narrative around that, which I'm not equipped to talk about. I'd love actually to hear a perspective on this topic from someone who is non-binary. So if you are listening to this and you are non-binary and you'd love to kind of reply to this and kind of create some kind of dialect and conversation around this, I'd really love it, because I think that would be a really interesting take. Because as always, this is my opinion. This is very much biased towards me, inevitably. So yeah, just wanted to kind of bring that up because I think that would be really interesting to hear kind of a different take on this. But so you maybe you have a microaggression, right? And then you retreat inside for speaking louder because you're like, oh God, I just, I don't want to cause, I want to disrupt things. That wasn't a pleasant experience. So I don't really want to kind of go there and kind of delve into that further. What then happens there is you've then just let somebody take your power away from you. And this is where we have to really claim it back as women and be like, no, hang on. That's okay. Someone has behaved in a way that they shouldn't have behaved to me, but I'm going to take this power back and I'm going to be like, no, this is what I think. This is why I behaved that way. This is okay. So that's really key. The other part of that is about implicit bias, which is where essentially like double standards. So that is where women in business are judged more harshly than men. And this happens every single goddamn day. Every day. So you have a situation where a woman does something and, it is judged in such a different light than it would for a man. And we call that implicit bias. And that is hugely linked to this idea of being direct, because I honestly believe the reason people are not direct in business is because of this implicit bias thing, that they are terrified of kind of saying something wrong. And to be honest with you, that was this podcast. That was this podcast for me. This podcast is nearly a year old. Maybe few months from that, but we're getting there. And this podcast was in the making for 2-3 years before it actually launched. And half of the reason we didn't do it was because I was just kind of like, I just don't know if I can deal with, this idea that, we say this and someone that's offended by this. And the reality of it is right, is people are going to get offended by anything you say to some degree, because you can't constantly be pushing out a lot of content and not say something wrong. And the biggest change for me in that was that I allowed myself, and I said to myself, and I think it's on record, I think it's maybe the first episode I say, I am creating this podcast and I'm prepared to have my opinions change, for me to evolve, for me to say, actually, I said that at one point and now I don't think that, for me to be able to change my opinion. And that was the only way that I was able to actually do it, because if not, I was just constantly going around in circles being like, oh, do we want to do it? Do we not? And actually it was like, it's never gonna be perfect. And I make mistakes all the time in my everyday life, every single day. So it's unreasonable to think that just because we're going to record a piece of content that will not be the same case. And so, yeah, that's a slight tangent, but I think that might be helpful for anyone who's kind of feeling into this and thinking like, I just don't know, like there's something really not sitting well with you. I really had to lean in order to fully kind of take up more space. And that's hard. It can be difficult at times. But this idea of the double standards thing is not okay. It is categorically not okay. And it's even worse when we look at intersectionality of different groups. Yeah. So obviously this episode, I'm trying not to be here all day. And this isn't kind of a delve into, I'm not trying to make it really complex and delve into loads of things. I just think it's interesting to talk on a few of these topics. However, when we start bringing in privilege and different subsections of privilege into this conversation, it gets worse in terms of implicit bias. So in terms of if you're a black businesswoman versus if you are a white businesswoman, I'm obviously a white businesswoman, the implicit bias that I will experience compared to a black businesswoman is potentially a lot less. And that, again, is not okay. It is really not okay, and it's really painful, and it's heartbreaking. It's not fair. But I think it's important when I'm talking about this for you to kind of understand this and kind of see that, yeah, if you are, someone who comes from a section of society or a community or a particularly marginalized group, you maybe feel this really a lot more. And this is where there's a real differentiation between who then so-called, and I'm doing air quotes here, kind of succeeds and who's at the top. Because often it's like people who are, if you're experiencing implicit bias and microaggressions and you're feeling this really deeply on an ongoing basis, then yeah, you're not going to want to be really direct, because everything around you is telling you not to be. And this is where we have to have allies. We've got to have people who are standing up and, talking more fully about this, because it's about us pulling each other up. Because if we do not do this, if you do this alone and you don't stand up for the women, this is why we end up, in this situation. Anyway, we're going to move on from that because I could talk about this all day. When you are thinking about being more direct, what comes up for you? Write down what comes up for you when you think about being more direct. And a lot of people, it'll be this worry. It's like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm too bossy. I don't want people to think I'm aggressive. I don't want people to think that I'm just really opinionated and only have one point of view. That's kind of what comes up for people. So it is really important that you understand that doesn't have to be the case. You can change the narrative around that. And especially if you're running your own business. So if you're running your own business and you're calling the shots and you are leading, if you're a leader in your industry, if you are someone who is really rooting and pushing things forward and are progressive, you have the power to completely change that. If you are someone who's sat in a huge corporate organization and is really struggling with the kind of, throes of what that brings, then I understand that is slightly harder. However, I would argue you can still put a lot of this into practice and really be forceful with this, because it needs people to really take it seriously. So you are not bossy, you are not aggressive by being direct. The way that happens, though, and the way you facilitate it is the difference, and is why you've got to do this well, okay? So when you are trying to be more direct, there's a few things you need to really look at. One, you need to be really clear. Understand what it is you're trying to say. Be really clear and be composed. Just be calm, yeah? Calmness is the biggest thing I can say in this situation. You need to understand why you're saying what you're saying, and you need to understand what is the message. Because ultimately, that will allow you to be way more direct than if you don't know that, because then it just becomes this kind of babbling long, transcript of information that you think at the end of it, I don't even know if I've said what I want to say. So get really clear on what I want to say, why am I saying it, and be composed. But there's also an element of you have to just get out of your own way, and you have to just go for it, and you have to stop kind of making all the excuses and just bloody be more direct and say what you want to say. Now, the other thing to think about is understanding who you're talking to. So sometimes you're going to have to change your delivery to suit different people. That's not me saying bend over backwards for them. What I'm saying is that, when I am facilitating in my work and I have clients, many of my clients are very different. I talk to them in different ways. People need different communication styles. People, respond better to different ways of being spoken to. And so therefore I change my delivery to suit that. And that I'm still direct in all of the ways that I talk, but I am doing it from a different angle and kind of talking to them in a different way. And that is something that you will, it's a more advanced level of this and a more advanced progression. But if you can start interchanging that, you will really find that this works for you and you really start winning in this area. The key thing as well that I want to talk about with being direct is that if you start being direct, you will start saying the thing that everyone is wondering and everybody wants to know, which is the key thing, because so many people want to say something and they don't for whatever reason. This is about, when you look at your leadership, it's like, right, how can I lead people forward? How can I help people move towards our mission? And for that, I say start saying what people are wondering. Start saying the questions that people need to hear. That's really important. Yeah? If you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it. And I do this very often. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's quite it'd be easier not to. In fact, a lot of the conversations I have day to day, it would be easier for me not to have them. But does that get me to where I want to go? No. Does it help other women? No. Is it progressive? No. Is it just repeating the same stuff that we've been doing for centuries? Yeah. And so that is why I am so keen on more people being direct, saying what you want to say, standing up for other people, saying things that are going to help other people to speak up. That's another thing. So it might be that you are more direct to allow other people to actually sit in what they think, and then share. A lot of people, once someone says something and is really direct, it gives other people permission. That is frustrating as someone who is, who argues like people need to be more direct. That can be frustrating, but sometimes you just got to accept that that's the thing, and then you can kind of lead that conversation. So we talked about calmness before, and calmness is so key to this whole thing working. So I would say the overall message, if you're going to take one thing from this, is the calmness that comes from doing this proactively is what will make you really stand out. And people come to me and say, May, you are so extremely direct. You say what you think, you have no filter. And, I do have a bit of a filter, obviously, but I totally get what they're saying. I will say things as they are, and I'm brutal, right? And that's because my clients need that. That is what gets them the results that we get for people. We do it in a respectful way. I do it in a way that is loving. It comes from an extremely good place, but I am really brutal with them, and I'll say what they need to hear from time to time, or day to day, week to week. But the reason that works, and the reason that it can be done in a way that is kind and is taken in the right possible way, I believe, is from the calmness. And it's interesting because sometimes people will comment on that and say, you have a calmness about you, you have an ease about you, you have this, I don't want to say nonchalance, but like a way of being that is common to me. And even though you're telling me things that are hard to hear, and even though you are pushing the boundaries of what I believe to be true or what I believe to be possible, the calmness is comfort and the calmness is soothing. And I agree with it. I 100% agree with it. And that has been something that I have worked on for a long time. So it's not me saying that, this happens overnight. It might do for you. You might naturally already be very good at this. Okay. Some people are, some people aren't, but I do believe it's something you can cultivate within yourself. And for me, it was a thing that has taken me a long time, but I work on it because I really have found the balance of that. And when people come and say to me, what is, the secret sauce? What is it that makes you so good at what you do? There is a whole host of things. However, one of them is around this calmness, but pairing that with being really direct. So to leave you on today, and sorry, I am sniffling because I'm suffering from the long, dragged out cold or whatever on earth is going around at the moment. I want to leave you with the ideas and the thoughts around why you need to be more direct in terms of why people want you to be more direct. So, people want other people to be more direct than ever before. We are in a pandemic of people who feel like they're lost, feel like they don't know what they're doing, feel really confused, feel lonely. People want to be led, and they want to be led by strong people who have interesting ideas, who are paving a way for something different, who are talking about things, right? And this is not that everybody has to agree with you, right? This is not what this is about. It's about people standing for something and having an open conversation and being open to debate and dialogue, right? And you being direct as a business owner and as a leader is so immensely important to this. It really will connect people to feeling like they belong somewhere, to feeling like they know something new, they are experiencing a different way of living, experiencing a different option. Communication is the thing that is kind of the barrier to that. Men have done this for a long time. Women also have, but women are not represented at the same kind of level that men are on this. And it's frustrating to me because there is so many women who have a really big voice and have a really big message that they want to share, but they don't for whatever reason. I know the reasons, but we're not going to go into that. And so I want more women to stand for what, talk about what they believe in, speak, have a voice, talk clearly. Don't just kind of say, oh, I think this and it might be this, might not be. Like, no, say what you think. Be really direct. People want that now. People are craving that level of connection. The other thing that people in society are like really craving today, because we haven't got it from many of the world leaders or many of the, many parts of society, is they want certainty. And you can bring certainty. People think, oh, I can't do this. I can't fix the world. No, right, maybe we can't. But that's okay. We don't need to do that for people to just feel better and feel happier. What we need is certainty, and people seek that out. Human beings have forevermore and will do. But they want people who are certain in their belief system. Now, this is not the same as being like unable to have any kind of constructive conversation and not kind of be flexible. That's not what I'm saying. What I am trying to drill into you here is the idea that, well, it's me, right? I'm a walking example of this. This idea that you can talk really confident and you can be really certain in what you do, and that is really endearing to people. So what I mean by that is, for me, the results I provide for people and the service that I deliver within May James as a business is so certain in my head, is so clear. Because I tell people, no, I'm not going to be able to help you, or I tell people, yes, I can, let's go. There is a certainty there. There's a directness there. And that is endearing. It's people who want to be like, yeah, I want to be in this room with this woman. Who is this May James? She's really cool. She really understands what she does. I understand what I don't do for people. I understand where I can't help people. I understand at the point in which I have to pull out and be like, hey, this is not, I'm not the one for you anymore on this path because you need X, Y, and Z person. That clarity, that direction, that certainty is so attractive. It's really endearing and attractive, and it's what we want. I want that. I want to seek out women who are like that. Whenever I find a woman who is so clear on a certain set of things, I'm like, yes. Even if I have no clue as to what to do or the industry or what it's related to or anything, I'm like, I want to know more from you because you're interested and you have a certain understanding of yourself. And that comes as part of your leadership. Your leadership direction comes from you sitting in this idea of, what do I believe in? What do I know? What am I so certain on? People want certainty. So I hope today's made you kind of think about some things. I know it's not hugely business related in terms of a strategic point of view, in terms of actually growing your business, but this in itself, if you can get deep into this will massively help your business, massively help your leadership, your team, your growth, everything. Like, this is such a key discussion, and we could discuss numerous topics around this because I'm really, this is a really interesting conversation, I think. But we've got to have this. This is the really deep stuff that is going to allow you to go from good to great, or from great to exceptional. And this is something that will constantly be something you can work on. So there's one question I want to leave you with today as we kind of wrap up this episode. And that question is, what is one thing that you are going to do to be more direct in your day-to-day work, operations, running of your business? What is one thing? And I'd love to know. Come and tell me on Instagram. Come and find me. It's @may.james_, and tell me about it. Tell me what is your one thing? What has come up for you in this episode? Like, what were you like, wow, yeah, light bulb moment. Actually, I need to do this, or I need to be this, or actually, I used to be this and I wasn't anymore. Whilst you're over there on Instagram, today we have the International Women's Day campaign that's launched, which we've done a campaign this year, which is really exciting, showcasing some of the amazing women within the May James community. So go and check that out on social. If you are subscribed to our email list, the CEO Edit, which goes out every week, there has been a special edition that has gone out today, all about hearing from members of the community again. So yeah, we're celebrating today. I want to celebrate women. I want to celebrate the incredible achievements that people are making. And I hope this episode has really maybe inspired you, maybe given you something to think about, and has given you some fuel to be like, yeah, do you know what? I have a voice, I have a message, I need to speak out more, I am here for it, let's go. You've got this. I'll see you next week. Bye.